Many Rohingya refugees fear they will again face ethnic cleansing if they're sent back to Myanmar. After fleeing rape, torture and murder, more than 650,000 Rohingya are living in squalid conditions in camps in Bangladesh. Both countries are working on the logistics of repatriation, but for now there has been no movement of any refugee. Activists are warning it may be too soon and too dangerous to send the Rohingya back. Details from Clarissa Ward.
They're fleeing for their lives. After an arduous 10-day journey, these Rohingya refugees have made it to safety in Bangladesh. Dazed and exhausted, but safe for now from the horrors they escaped in Myanmar. My son was killed by the Myanmar army, this man says, and still I stayed there, but then they destroyed my house, so there was no place for me to stay. Mohammed left with 43 others from his village, more than half of them women and children. Now they're being told to return to the place that nearly killed them, as official vetting in the repatriation process begins. But the grim reality is that the crisis in Myanmar is far from over. Girls were unable to sleep there at night. They would stay awake in fear of the military, this woman says. They used to harm us, harass us, hurt us. There was sorrow and tears everywhere. The families will join some 650,000 other Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, who have fled Myanmar since late August, when an attack by Rohingya militants on security forces sparked a brutal crackdown by the army, with widespread reports of rape, murder, and villages burned to the ground. Now, as the prospect of a return to danger looms, protests are taking place in the refugee camps. Many say they will only return home with guarantees of their security, and aid agencies say that is still far from certain.
Any decision to return has to be voluntary. It has to occur in conditions of safety and dignity, and it has to be sustainable. To ensure that this happens, there is a lot of work that needs to occur.
A key concern that returnees will be sent to internment camps inside Myanmar, with no timeline on when they can return to their villages. If the government of Bangladesh threatens to kill us by cutting our throats, we will not go even then, this woman says. I will be happy to die here because it's a Muslim country, this man says. In there, they tortured us to death. The prospect of an easier death now the only comfort for a people who have come to expect nothing from this world. Clarissa Ward, CNN.
Well, Matthew Smith is co-founder of the human rights organisation Fortify Rights. He's with us now from Bangkok. Matthew, thank you for being with us. There's some question at the moment about whether there's been some kind of delay in this repatriation process. A Bangladeshi official has told CNN that's not the case, but he says there's still a lot of work to be done. So what are you hearing right now?
Well, we're hearing something similar from Bangladesh officials. Essentially, it appears as though they were unable to get refugees on the Bangladesh side of the border to participate in this process at this stage. And there may be some other logistical issues that they're working through. Our concern right now is that they're postponing it for the wrong reason. There are a lot of human rights concerns on both sides of the border, particularly in Myanmar, that make this plan a problem, and unfortunately, they're not postponing it for the right reasons.
What are the reasons that it is being postponed for?
Well, what we're hearing, John, is that there are logistical issues. The government's been a bit vague about it, but as far as we can tell, refugees are not lining up to go back to a country that they just fled from in recent weeks and months. You know, it wasn't that long ago that the Myanmar army was burning down villages, committing massacres, mass rape. This was just a few months ago. So the idea that it's sensible right now to send Rohingya back into a situation that hasn't changed much at all is farcical at best.
Okay, in advance of this repatriation, your organisation released a video. It features the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. Here's a short clip.
তারা যদি আরারে সুন্দর দিগার দিতে দিলে দিয়ে আর নত তো আর মন দরিয়া মা বেলে দিয়ে তো ভালো আর বার মা দিয়ে না দে
Ara zian tuar ian edun lusana bad ara zian tuar ian dile daim na ara rohingya dile daim de nole ara no daim ara ede biske faram da bala ara dil edra hosara gori bala ide.
Clearly, no one, it seems, wants to leave Bangladesh right now to head back to Myanmar. So what's the reason for the timing here? Why is it starting now?
Well, in our view, Myanmar authorities are essentially capitalizing on Bangladesh's desire to rid itself of a very large refugee population. And what Myanmar has effectively done in the last several weeks is they've managed to get the international community to focus on this issue of repatriation. And in doing so, they've diverted attention away from the heinous crimes that the Myanmar army committed just weeks and months ago. And so, from one perspective, it would appear as though Myanmar wants the world to believe they're doing the right thing without actually making any fundamental changes on the ground. The rights for Rohingya have really not improved at all on the Myanmar side.
Yeah, here's what one woman says is waiting for her back in Myanmar.
این আটটা মানুষ মারি আটটা হার মানুষ কাড়া নাকি গড় ভিতর গলা দিয়ে যদি পুরা দিবেলে হইলে ইয়া তো আর হস্তা আছে না বাজি অক্কর
There are no NGOs, there are no monitoring groups on the ground in Rakhine State. Journalists are pretty much banned from the region by the Myanmar government. So once the Rohingya return, who's there to monitor this situation? Who's there to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again?
Right, it's a good point, John. And there have Rohingya communities over the last year have really done amazing work to do what they can to document the human rights violations at great personal risk. Their security right now, the security of average Rohingya civilians, is certainly under threat. The fact that State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi is denying still. To this day, denying UN fact-finders access to Northern Rakhine. There are some aid groups, but they have very limited access. So there's a tremendous fear that we haven't seen the worst of the violence and the killings.
Yeah, and clearly so many people just don't want to leave. And it boggles the mind as to why this is happening. But Matthew, good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, John.